I'm back. That's some kind of quote from a scary show, but I can't remember what it is. Anyways, small technical difficulties, but here I am again. Come find me, everybody. What would it take for you to come and find me? Come and find me. I'm going to pull you and I'm going to ping you wherever you are in the world to come join me. Here I am live, taking over Talk to the Entities. How did I get so lucky? This is my second try. I had a brilliant intro that lasted about 2 minutes, and then we were having technical difficulties. So that brilliant intro may be gone. And I wonder what's possible now. Hello. I am seeing some comments. I think I can see comments from Facebook, but I'm live in number of places, or maybe this is YouTube. Anywho, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for stumbling into me. I have the privilege, the honor of being a facilitator of the tools of Talk to the Entities. So I wanted to take some time today to introduce you to my journey with these beautiful tools, these beautiful ways of empowering myself to engage the whole realm of unseen things in a way that has left me feeling stronger, more me, more relaxed, happier. Wonder what these tools can do for you. If you're new to the tools of Talk to the Entities, how excited. I'm so thrilled that I would get to share them with you. I'm just kind of reaching out and looking, where can I start? What can we chat about today? What are the infinite possibilities of what we can create here together today? So, I currently live in Western Canada. I've grown up in Western Canada. I was born and raised on the beautiful prairies. It's not where I live anymore, but that's where I was raised. And it's a lot of all of that space, all of that grass, all of that wind. It was such a gift to me. And I think my family would tell you that I just always had this, what everyone around me called, a really big imagination. Anybody else? Anybody else? There I was, a little kid living out in the hills, kind of in the middle of nowhere. So I had my brother as my friend, and I had a whole world of beings that I couldn't see, that I thought I was making up. So I played and grew and learned and grew and changed, just like us all. And my engagement with that entire realm of beings that were so generous, connected to the land, connected to me, I let it all go, and I put it away and put away my childish things. Is that a quote from the Bible, that we put away our childish things? Anyways, and, started being a grown-up. And rumbling in the background was always this desire, a wish, a fantasy. I would have called it a fantasy, that I could engage, be aware of beings that I couldn't see, that there was more to this life than everything that I could, touch, talk to, see with my eyes. And so I always had a longing that I had defined as a fantasy that was for other people who were gifted, not for me. Completely ungifted, totally normal. No gifts with anything beyond what's normal. And hello, everybody out there. Hi. I'm so glad that you're joining me. I'm just sharing in a loose, fun way, my story with Talk to the Entities and what it has gifted to me and what I've been able to create with it. I would love to hear yours. I stumbled into Talk to the Entities really by the book written by Shannon O'Hara called Talk to the Entities, in which Shannon shares her journey, her story of what it was like for her to have all this intense awareness of beings and how she navigated that, how she then created the whole body of work that is Talk to the Entities. And it was such an invitation to me. I love that story. It's a short book broken up into these magical chapters. And it was a real invitation to me. But honestly, I read it on my Kindle. I read it hiding because I didn't want anyone in my family to know. This was probably 7 years ago. I didn't want anyone in my family to know I was reading it. So I was doing it on the sly, on the down low, on my Kindle, in secret. And I devoured that book. And I walked away still wistfully thinking, that's so amazing that Shannon has these gifts. I'm so sad that I don't. So that was my first hint. And if anyone out there has those feelings of dismissing themselves, dismissing their gifts, I really would love to be an invitation to you today to get curious about what are you aware of? Not what aren't you, what can't you do, but what are you aware of? What is possible for you? So, Talk to the Entities book, a great place to start. I loved it. Yeah, Astrid. I'm so right. Me too. Others can, and of course, I'm not aware of entities. But I grew up really remotely in Western Canada in these grasslands. These grasslands, they're intensely beautiful to me. And when I'm there, my body relaxes, my heart opens up. All of this space, all of this grass that has grown for hundreds of years on these rolling hills. And I grew up ranching, so I would ride out on these hills, and just like look over this magnificent space. And I could, to quote my dad, I just remember him and I sitting on those hills on our horses, going out to gather cattle. And we're just looking over these rolling hills. And he would just say, Linda, can't you just about imagine the buffalo just coming over that ridge? And I could. And I had always, like I said, kind of dismissed that awareness as imagination. I had disqualified it as awareness and relegated it to fantasy and wishful thinking. But what was I aware of? Even as a little girl playing by myself, out in my giant backyard, our ranch backed onto what we call the community pasture. So it's just mile upon mile upon mile of pasture land, this what I would call native range, this native grassland. So grass has a tender, special place in my heart. And now, so I stumbled into the book of Talk to the Entities. And although I still kind of assumed that it was all my awareness was all fantasy and that other people were so much greater and so much better at this stuff than me, I began to ask questions. So you can't really receive anything new into your life, any new information, until you actually get curious, and really start asking a question about even something as fundamental as who you think you are, what you think you are, what you are certain your gifts are and are not. So I still live very rural. Now I'm surrounded by trees, all of these poplar trees. I invite you to start to tap into them. And I left that book, Talk to the Entities, my first reading, and I just took what Shannon was being and I started playing with it on my own. I had the honor and privilege of going to a number of Talk to the Entity beginning classes, and it took a number of them, to be honest, to start to break down in me all of the ways, all of the barriers that I had built up and all of the coping mechanisms that I had built up to my awareness of what was around me that I couldn't see, that others couldn't see, but that I was aware of. So it had been showing up in my life pretty much all my life with really intense night terrors, nightmares. My mom would sit with me when I was a kid to help me sleep, and she would sit in a chair and read her book as I tried to drift back to sleep after these intense nightmares that I continued to have throughout my life. I would wake up in the middle of the night when I was 40 and I would just be in this intense night terror of not knowing who I was or where I was and being utterly terrified, and just like I had to leave a light on still when I was 40 to be able, one of my coping mechanisms. What are your coping mechanisms? How is this showing up for you? This is how it showed up for me. I had an underlying depression. I had this, like I talk about growing up really remotely. So you can imagine I'm not living in a big city. I don't have people around me, in the hustle and bustle of urban areas. My life is really different than that. I live really remotely, and I was always had this sense of, I wish everybody would just leave me alone. And I would be always having this way in which I was trying to push people out of my world, even though I didn't have a lot of people around me. And now I get that was actually part of my awareness of these beings that I couldn't see, that others couldn't see, that no one else could validate were there, and that I refused to even ask a question about. There's lots of other ways it showed up for me too. So how is it showing up for you? What are your coping mechanisms? What are you aware of? What are you aware of? So I left that book of reading Shannon's book, Talk to the Entities, and I got curious. I went to all of these different Talk to the Entity beginning classes. And when I say I probably did about 8 or maybe even more. And with each one, I would take the tools and I would head out into my world physically and energetically, and I would start to use the tools. And I started to figure out, to discover, to be curious, actually curious, and start to discover how this was showing up for me and how I could be with these tools. Yeah. Yes, Astrid. I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad that wish of being alone, even when there's nobody there. That's really cool. Is that an awareness? So like, you know, that energy that I was talking about earlier of like, darn it, Shannon's so gifted, but I'm such a loser. I could read about Shannon's experience, but that's Shannon's experience. I had to take these tools and start to figure out who I was, discover who I was. And that just took some time. It just took time and space. It took class after class after class for me to start to get more and more sane in my own world. I'm just remembering how, like, the way that, like, the intensity of having this awareness and not knowing what it was, and always feeling like I was a little bit crazy. I kind of forgot about that. But that's one of the ways it showed up for me, is that I always felt a little bit crazy, like I was saying things that I knew weren't me. And I would leave conversations with people and I'd be like, what the heck? I'm so crazy. Why was I saying that? What was I not even just saying, but how I was feeling in my body and the way I was being with other people? I would just think, man, this is so crazy. And I had actually a fear of being crazy. I had kind of an expiration date. I had I thought, if I can just make it to 24 and still not be institutionalized, that then I was home free. Because somewhere I had read that mental illness can show up in that early adulthood phase. Oh, God. So I made it to 24, but I still had that underlying energy of, man, I'm so crazy. So the more I started to use these tools for myself in my own way, to get curious with them and how it was showing up for me, not just comparing myself to Shannon or other people, I just got distracted that because I'm wearing a black shirt sitting on a black chair, that I look like a hunchback. I'm not a hunchback, for the record. So continually comparing myself is a way to never have me. It's a real way that our mind works. And to discover who you are, I would invite you to get past your mind. Your mind is not the source of that. It's something so much greater and so much deeper. And the biggest surprise for me with Talk to the Entities is that it has been this vehicle that has empowered me to discover me. Like, who would have thought that through these tools that are called Talk to the Entities, which seems like something so much outside of you, that through that, like, I actually found my way home to me. Not that it's like a one little X marks the spot. It's this continually changing and shifting space of being. So that's my real invitation for you to the tools of Talk to the Entities. If you've been to a class, what would it take for you to pull out your manual and get really curious about what you can discover right in your own backyard? My backyard has, it is such a gift. It is gifted to me. Like, you can see that in my story as a little girl. And here I am, 53, all these years later, and I'm still this little girl discovering and being empowered and contributed to by my backyard. So I would invite you into your backyard, no matter if it is concrete or pavement. Mine is gravel and grass and trees, and yours is probably something really different. And what are you aware of? Who or what is in your backyard that could contribute to you, that would make life easier today? Oh, I see my hair might be on my mic. I hope that's not. What's it gonna? Things are always backwards in StreamYard. There we go. Who or what can contribute to you that would make your life easier today. Who and what is right there in your backyard that you can contribute to, that would create more for you and for the whole world? What questions can you ask that are going to create ease with who you truly be and invite you to move past those definitions and coping mechanisms that you're using right now? So one of the first questions that Talk to the Entities invites you to is, what am I aware of? So I wonder how you could use that today with everything. Maybe it's something physical that shows up in your world. Maybe it's just an underlying angst in your being that you could start to get really and truly curious with the question, what am I aware of? And then it takes a tremendous amount of courage to start to trust yourself, to start to trust that subtle awareness that you have, your very own knowing, so that you don't have to turn to Shannon, that you don't have to turn to anybody outside of you. What are you aware of? And it's in that subtle, quiet, courageous trusting of your own knowing. That's the arena where I began to discover me, to know me, to be me. And I wonder what you could discover in that arena. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so freaking much to Talk to the Entities and all that these tools have contributed to me. Since I became a Talk to the Entities certified facilitator and had the honor of facilitating these tools, I have on more than one occasion called Talk to the Entities the sanest parent that I have ever had, because it's just like this wealth of steadiness that has contributed to my life in this unrelenting way that invites me to be more and more and more. So I invite you to pick up the book written by Shannon O'Hara, Talk to the Entities. And I wonder what it would take for you to discover more of you as you talk to the entities. Thank you so much, everybody, for hanging out with me today. I'm just now trying to gracefully waste some time till my live gets ended. Is it working? Do I look graceful or do I look a little awkward? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Astrid, and everybody whose comments I maybe don't see. How does it get better than this?